Hi guys, how are you? Welcome back to Plastic Paddies. Cave Me the Vulture. We're at episode number 11. My word, this is flying by. Thank you so much for joining me, wherever you are joining me from, Spotify, YouTube, etc. I just want to say a big thank you to all our new subscribers, followers, all of that jazz this week. We're now up to 110 followers on Instagram. We've got 85 followers on TikTok. We're still on 14 subscribers on YouTube. So if anybody comes across this on YouTube, or if anybody's watching these videos that isn't subscribed yet, subscribe. God, I sound like such a YouTuber. But yeah, thank you all so much for your support. And do you know what? I'm finding, maybe it's me being impatient, maybe I've got no patience whatsoever, but I'm finding it really difficult to grow the social media. So if anyone's got any tips on what I need to be doing, and this is all just me, myself, I've got nobody helping me, so I'm doing all the Instagram posts, all the TikTok posts, all the YouTube editing, everything. So if anyone's got any good tips for me, just do let me know, because it would be very helpful. But yeah, anyway, welcome back. Episode 11, Plastic Paddies Podcast. What are we talking about today? So we're still on the topic of Irish mythology. And for anybody that doesn't know, if anybody that's new listening, hello, welcome. We've been on the subject of the Irish mythological cycles. And we're on the last one, we're on number 4. So this is the historical cycle, also known as the King's cycle. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. But before that, we're going to do Irish Word of the Week. Callum, you need to send me this jingle, because this is killing people. I'm sure they don't want to hear it. But the word of the week this week is short, sweet, simple, and it's Ree, and it means king. And it's spelled R-I with a fodder over it. Ree, and it means king, which I think is very sweet and appropriate for this week's cycle. But before we jump into it, I'm going to catch up on my week. There's not really that much to tell, to be honest. I'm still on a high from my island trip. As you guys know, me and Shauna went to Cork. Best trip ever. It was so wholesome, so lovely. I've made a really good reel and TikTok of it, just like one little 1-second clips from our trip. It's very wholesome, so if you please go and give it a like. So yeah, I've just been riding the coattails of the high from the holiday. And what else have I been doing? I've had a pretty quiet week, to be honest. I had a job interview. Wish me luck. It went really well, so hopefully I'll be getting a new job soon. Getting paid more importantly. And I feel like I have to apologise for coming on here with my hair looking like this. I feel like every time I come on here, I look so janky. It's unbelievable. But I film on a Sunday, and that's before the start of the next week. And I put rosemary oil in my hair, so my hair always looks really dark, really greasy. But we're running a podcast, guys. It's not a bloody fashion show. Give me a break with you. But yeah, a very quiet week. I'm trying to think what else I've been doing. I haven't been to any Irish events or anything for ages, but it's because I've been away, to be fair. Oh, but I am going to New York in September, which is very, very exciting. My brother, my extremely talented little brother, is a writer, and he is currently writing a musical, but a song that he wrote some time ago, he entered a competition and won it. And the competition is for songwriters, and they the songs that win get a showcase in this Broadway show, and this place called Studio 54? Somewhere like that in New York, and my brother won it. So me, my mum, my brother and his partner are all going to New York to support him in September, so I'm so excited. I can't wait. I'm really going to try and get a guest on. I feel like New York, it would be the perfect place to get another Plastic Paddy on the podcast. because there's such a big Irish community there and there's so much history there and stuff. So keep your fingers crossed. I've told you all before, I've got absolutely no shame about chasing guests down for this podcast. So I'm on the hunt. There's this place I really want to try as well. It's called, I think it's called the Dead Rabbit. It's like an Irish pub in New York. I found them on TikTok. Obviously, everybody finds everything on TikTok nowadays. You know, I found out the other day that TikTok has now surpassed Google in terms of like searching for stuff. People of a certain generation go to TikTok before they go to Google, which is mad. But yeah, this place I found on TikTok called Dead Rabbit. They're an Irish bar in New York. So I'm going to go there when I go. I'm really excited. Anyone that's got any good recommendations for New York places, not just Irish places, but if you do know any of any other Irish pubs, let me know. But not just Irish places, just like any fun, exciting things to do in New York. I think we're there for 5 days in total, which is not that long. But I'm one of those annoying people that I don't sit down, I don't rest on holiday. I want to do one thing after the other, after the other, after the other, especially if it's like a city break, because then you're only there for like a few days. You want to squeeze everything in, you know? If I'm like going to the, you know, a beach holiday purely to relax, it's different. But when I'm on a city break, I'm like, I want to do this. So give me all the recommendations so I can squeeze as much in as I can while I'm on my little New York holiday, you know? Just a gal of out town in the Tribeca area. I don't even know what that means. I don't know where that is. But yeah, that's my exciting news. I've not really had much of a week. But anyway, we're going to New York. Anyway, now it's time for my singing voice again. Irish news story of the week. So this Irish news story of the week is very, very wholesome. It's about Britain's Got Talent. Now, I don't really watch Britain's Got Talent. I'm not a huge like talent show girl. I used to love them, and then as I got older, I started to really think like, are some of these people being exploited? You know, in the audition phases when they show people that are, yeah, I just don't like the way that they did those things. So I don't really watch them anymore, if I'm being honest. But this week's news story is lovely. So a little there's an Irish kid. His name's Cillian O'Connor, and he auditioned for Britain's Got Talent this year, and he's a magician. And he made it all the way to the final. He didn't win, he came third, but how amazing. He's like 13 years old, he's still a little baby. But shout out Cillian O'Connor. And I like I said, I don't really watch these shows too often, but I did catch his audition and it was so sweet. Like I said, he's a magician, and he's actually autistic, and in his, you know, like the tape that the interview that they do before their audition, he talks about it, and he was saying that before he found magic, he found it really, really, really difficult to socialise with people, and he would often just be the kid in the corner on his own. You know, he didn't have many friends, and he was like, he didn't really know how to interact with people. It's something that he struggled with, and then he got into magic, and he's like, it's like completely changed his life. He's like, allows him to interact with the world around him like so much better. And even on his first audition, like it wasn't the final, hadn't found out he'd won or anything, but his reaction afterwards when everybody was first of all, his act was really good. He did really cool things, like he poured milk into this cup, and then it was like a white cup, and then the cup just unravelled into like ribbon on the floor, and there was a lamp on a desk next to him, and he turned the lamp on and off, and then he went and got the light bulb out of the lamp, and the milk was actually in the light bulb. It was very cool. And after like he'd done his tricks and everybody was like being really supportive and cheering for him, and he got a round of applause and stuff, he was like crying his eyes out, and he was on stage like, yes, get in. Like he was so, you could tell like how much it meant to him. He was absolutely buzzing. So yeah, he came third, so yay, well done Cillian. Hopefully we'll see a lot more of him. I hope this is his career now, you know. I hope it like boosts him enough to make this his career, because if he's 13, I think he's 13, and he's already doing this, imagine what he's going to be like when he's 23, you know. He's going to be like absolutely smashing it. So fingers crossed for you, buddy. But anyway, let's jump into the main bit. So like I said, today we're talking about the king cycle. It's the fourth and final cycle of all of the mythology cycles. Well, anyway, I thought it was a cycle. I thought it was like an agreed upon thing that there are 4 cycles. Turns out that's not true. Some people don't agree that there are 4 cycles. Some scholars argue that there is a 4th cycle, and some people say, it shouldn't really be counted. It's not really its own cycle. So it's supposed to be more, it's called either the king cycle or the historical cycle, as you know, and it's supposed to be the history of some of the early reigning Milesian kings. So, but the funny thing is, some of the kings were real, like they were real people, and some of the kings are entirely fictional. So I suppose it's kind of semi-historic, I would say. They're like semi-historical figures, but really they're just supposed to be kind of representations of like good kingship throughout Ireland. They're like setting the principles for what like an exemplary king is supposed to be, from these stories of kings that have come before. And I thought that they were their own stories. So I thought the king cycle or the historical cycle was a set of all its own tales, but they're actually, a lot of the tales can be found in the other in the other mythology cycles. But it makes a lot of sense because they all overlap, they all intertwine with each other. But I think the stories in the king cycle that are the same as the ones in the other cycle are maybe more focused on the king rather than the tale of what's happening. Do you understand what I'm trying to do? I'm not explaining that very well. But anyway, there's a lot of different stories. There isn't really one long story that blends into the other throughout the cycle. So I'm just going to tell you in chronological order like some of the biggest stories, but I'm going to focus on one in particular. So in chronological order, some of and I'm going to link below somewhere where you can find all of this information. But some of the main, like the big popular well-known stories in the King's Cycle would be the first Battle of Motora, which is way back in the mythological cycle. I talked about a battle happening between the Tuatha Danann and the Fofera, who are like these dark beings. Basically, the Tuatha Danann are like gods and goddesses, like powerful beings, and the Fofera are also very powerful, but they're kind of malevolent and dark, and there's a big battle between them. And then it's the Wooing of Etain, which is the story that I'm going to focus on today, actually, because I really like the story. I think it's a good tale. Then the birth of Cormac MacArt, who ends up becoming one of the High Kings of Ireland. The destruction of Durga's hostel, the cattle raid of Cooley, which we spoke about in the Ulster cycle, the death of Crocha MacNessa, who also we've mentioned in one of our previous stories, the fate of the children of Ushnach, the expulsion of the Desi, and the death of Cormac MacArt. Those are the tales in chronological order. But today, I am going to focus on one of my favourite stories from Irish mythology, and it's the Wooing of Etain. I don't know if it's Etain, or Etain, but I'm going to say Etain. And it's mentioned in the Ulster mythology cycle, but I skipped over it because that's quite a long cycle, so I skipped over this story. So I'm looking forward to getting into it now. And this is like just going to round them up, So, the Wooing of Etain. We'll start off with, there's this dude, and his name is Medea. And he has got a son that he's fostered called Angus. And both of these guys, by the way, are Tuatha Danann. So Angus grows up, he leaves home. Angus ends up, through one way or another, becoming the owner of Newgrange. And Newgrange is in County Meath. It's like this, I've mentioned it on here before as well. It's like this old Neolithic passage tomb. He ends up owning that and other passage tombs in that same area. So he's living in County Meath in Tara. So one day Medea goes to visit Angus, upon his arrival into Engus's village, which, like I said, is in County Meath, he rocks up to the village and he sees these, like, going to see his son, not seen him for ages. He's buzzing. There's some kids playing, and they're playing with branches of branches from a holly bush, which is so funny now when I think of kids now, like what they play with, a holly bush. It's hilarious. But yeah, they're playing with these branches off of a holly bush, and a sprig of this holly flies off and hits Medea in the face, right in his eye, and actually ends up blinding him. Luckily, he visits a physician, and he gets cured eventually. The physician is able to cure him, but Medea, he can't let this go. The men in these stories, they love holding a grudge, don't they? But he can't let it go, and he says to Engus, I think you kind of owe me some, like, compensation, considering that I only got blinded because I was coming to visit you. It was on your turf. I wouldn't have been there otherwise if you weren't there. So I think you, like, owe me something. So he lists off of a few things that he wants, but one of the things, the most important thing that he wants, is the hand of the most beautiful woman in Ireland. Enter Etain. So she is an Ulster woman, and she is just a human. She's not Tuatha De Danann or anything, but she's beautiful. She's the most beautiful woman in the land. And Medea is like, yep, I'll have that one, please and thank you. So Engus makes an agreement with Medea to compensate him, as a way of saying, like, he's sorry. I'm sorry that you were blinded, basically. Even though he's cured now, I think he's been a bit OTT, but whatever. However, Etain isn't just... she's not Engus's to give away. She isn't just any peasant woman that he can, say, you're marrying this guy now. She's actually the daughter of the king of Ulster, whose name is Alil. And he's obviously not just going to, marry his daughter off to anybody. So he's like, if you want my daughter's hand in marriage, you're going to have to work for it. So he sets Medea a set of tasks. But Medea says, oh, no, I'm not doing these tasks. Engus, you're going to do these tasks on my behalf, considering you owe me big time. So Engus is like, for God's sake, when are you ever going to drop it? He's like, fine, I'll do it. And he does. And the tasks, there's a few of them, and they're things like, they're like big things, like changing the course of rivers, and clearing, like, plains of land and stuff. But of course, these guys are Tuatha De Danann, so they, they're magical. They've got powers, they can do it. Oh, and he also wants payment in the form of Etain's weight in silver and in gold. He's like, you do these tasks and you pay me and you can have her. So Engus reluctantly completes the tasks, pays the fee, and eventually Medea and Etain are married. Enter, I think her name is Fuamnach. Now, this is Medea's ex-wife, and she is a Tuatha De Danann witch, also very powerful. And she is absolutely not happy that he's remarried, even though they're not married anymore. She's fuming. So, the saying, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. Well, apparently it also applies to supernatural women. She's like, I don't really want you, but I don't want anyone else to have you either. Typical. So she rocks up and she's pissed. She's so pissed, in fact, that she turns Etain, she casts a spell on Etain and turns her into a pool of water. And as this water is evaporating, this small, beautiful, tiny, like, fly flies up out of the like vapor of this water, and that's Etain. She's basically turned into a fly now. So Medea knows that Etain is the fly, and he keeps her around, keeps her close to him, and she sort of follows him everywhere, flying next to him and stuff. But even even Etain being a fly and being around Medea, Fuamnach decides that's too much. I don't want her anywhere near him. So she very spitefully conjures up a huge storm, which blows Etain away. Like, she's lost now. She's completely lost, and she's actually lost for 7 years. So after flying around for 7 long years, she's exhausted, and one day Etain ends up landing on a man. She needs a rest, and she lands on him. And this man just so happens to be Angus, Medea's adopted son, the guy that did all the tasks for him and stuff. So Angus knows that this is Etain, and he's like, I can tell you're absolutely exhausted. So he builds her like a tiny little bow. I don't know if it's pronounced boa or bower, but it's like a kind of parlour for women. It's like a woman's room where she would like get ready and just relax and just be, pamper herself and just really be looked after and taken care of. He builds her like a tiny little boudoir kind of out of crystal for this fly who's Etain to live in, and he carries this crystal boa around with him. But again, the witch, the Tuatha witch from Knock is not happy about this. She must be like very jealous of Etain or something, but she does not like her. So she conjures up another storm and blows Etain away again for another 7 years. 7 years passes, and the fly, or Etain, lands on the rim of a golden cup, and the cup belongs to the wife of this guy called Atar, who is an Ulster warrior. The woman drinks from the cup, swallows the fly, she gets pregnant, and she eventually gives birth to a daughter who is Etain reborn. So it is Etain, and she also names her Etain. So this is kind of like Etain 2.0. So Etain 2.0 is, when she grows up, is still considered the most beautiful woman in Ireland. And now there's this new guy called, I think his name's Oku. That's how I'm going to pronounce it. I'll put these names up on the screen, by the way, but his name's Oku Erin. And he is now at this time the High King of Ireland, and he's looking for a wife. So the provincial kings are like, we're not going to submit to you if you don't have a wife. Like, it's not a good look. That we're not going to take you very seriously. So he wants to marry Etain. She's the most beautiful woman in Ireland. That's who he wants to marry. However, Oku's brother is Ailill, who is the king. Remember the king of Ulster, who was the first Etain's father? Well, he's Oku's brother. So he's also decided that he's actually in love with Etain 2.0, and he wants to marry the reincarnation of his daughter, and Oku wants to marry this girl who's the reincarnation of his niece. All a bit weird, but whatever. I don't think they're actually related anymore. I don't think. But they both want to marry her, these two brothers, her dad and her uncle. Both want to marry her. So Ailill, who was Etain, the first Etain's father, is so in love with Etain 2.0 that he becomes sick, like physically unwell over her. He's actually dying because of how obsessed and like just completely consumed with her he is. And then Oku has to leave Tara for something, and he leaves Etain with Ailill, and Ailill ends up confessing his undying love for Etain and tells her, the reason I'm so sick is actually because I'm completely in love with you. I'm consumed by you and I need you, basically. And not having you and, you not loving me is like, I'm dying. Can you imagine someone loving you so much that they're like sick and dying? The twisted part of my brain, this is like my absolute dream, is for someone to be so deathly in love with me that they're like dying because of it. So yeah, he's like, basically, I love you so much, I'm obsessed with you, I'm going to die if I don't have you. He this is a little bit manipulative, and he's a little bit sort of emotionally guilt tripping her. Basically says to her that the only way I can get better is if you will me to get better. Like, just knowing that if you say the words, I want you to be well, like just knowing that you want me to be here, you want me to be around, and you want me to be healthy is enough. That will make, I'll be cured. I'll be back to full health if you do that. So Etain says to him, I really do wish that you'd get better. I want you to be well. I obviously don't want to see you die or anything. And of course, being a man, all he hears she says, I want you to be well. And all he hears are the words, I want you. That's what he chooses to listen to. And that's like the fire under his bum that he needs. And he's like, starts getting better immediately, basically. And then he takes it even further. That's not enough. He has to carry on, and he says, actually, I am getting better, but in order for me to be fully recovered, fully recouped back to myself, I need you to come and meet me somewhere at the top of this hill, because I've got a surprise for you. So, and this is basically his plan to try and woo her, is getting her to meet him at on top of this hill. And he says on top of the hill, so it's away from Oku's house. Even though Oku's not there, he's like, I can't disrespect him, that much in his own home, so let me do it outside of the house. So he says, come and meet me on the hill. He doesn't want to shame or embarrass the king. So Etain agrees. I don't know if she's really, really young, and this is why he's got some sort of power over her. This is why she keeps agreeing to this stuff. But Etain agrees. Well, I suppose he's emotionally manipulated her, hasn't he? So she goes to meet him on the top of this hill. She gets there and it's just him stood there, and she's like, well, where's this surprise then that you've been talking about? Where is it? And he's like, oh, no. This is just the first meeting. We've actually got to meet a few times first, and then I'll give you the surprise. She's like, God's sake, you're dragging this out really badly. So Etain goes along with it again. They end up meeting 3 times in the same spot, and on the 3rd time he ends up giving her the surprise, which actually just turns out to be him revealing his true identity, because this guy is in fact not even Alil, it's Midir. My God. So the guy that was in love with Etain number 1, well, he is Tuatha Danann, obviously, and he's used his magic to put the real Alil into a deep sleep, and he's transformed himself into Alil to get close to Etain. So he reveals himself, and he's hoping that she's gonna just, oh my God, fall to her knees and fall back in love with him and say, I can't, what have you've done this for me? You've gone on this big mission just to get me back. I love you, blah blah blah. That doesn't happen. He reveals himself to her, and obviously this is Etain 2.0 now. She doesn't actually even remember who he is. So she doesn't remember him. She doesn't remember him. But Midir is obviously absolutely obsessed with this woman, and he is begging her at this point. He's like, you don't remember me, but we were in love at one point, and I love you, and I can make you fall in love with me again. I'll never love another woman, blah blah blah. Please, 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 just come with me. Let's give this a go. And she says, okay, you know what? You've obviously gone to a lot of trouble for me. You're obviously declaring your love for me. I'll go with you on one condition. When Oku comes back from wherever he's gone, if he, says that I can go with you, if he gives me the permission, then I will go with you. So it's a little later down the line now. Oku has returned, and the real Alil is now awake and alive again. And Midir makes his way back to Tara to try and get Oku to agree to let Etain go with him. I don't know in what world he thinks this is going to happen, considering that's Oku's wife, but he's so obsessed with her, he's like, no, I'm gonna. So obviously Oku is the High King of Ireland, so he's very well respected, and Midir sort of knows that he has to play by the rules. He has to conduct himself in a very respectful manner. He can't turn up being rude or arrogant, any of those things. So he gets to Tara, gets to Oku's kingdom, and he challenges him to a board game, and it's an ancient Celtic board game, and the name of it is, I want to say Fidical. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. Again, I'll put the name of it up here. But it's an old Celtic board game, and there's loads of different Celtic names for it. There's a Welsh name for it, there's an old Brythonic name for it. I think the Scottish Gaelic name is the same as the Irish one. But this game was played all over the Celtic Isles, factually. It's not just in this mythology tale. This is a fact. It's a real game. Anyway, tangent. So he challenges him to this board game. and they play loads of like rounds of this game, and for every round, this, like, they're betting, they're playing for things like money or whatever, but every round the stakes are getting a little bit higher and a little bit higher. Medea keeps losing, but eventually he says, right, the highest stakes yet, if I win this game, we're basically playing for like a chance to embrace and like kiss Etain. Basically, he's trying to like get a little cheeky snog out of her, you know. And of course, the one round that he really needs to win, he ends up winning. So Medea's wins the game, and he's like, give me a snog you right now. Oku says that he will give him the prize. You can't, all right, you can, you know, have an embrace from her or whatever, but you have to wait a year. So come back in a year and claim your prize. So a year passes, Medea rocks up to Oku's gaff in Tara. But during this year, Oku has been like gathering an army of men to basically ambush Medea when he comes back and try and kill him. But remember, Medea is Tuatha Dé Danann, so he's like a magical man. So he doesn't come up the path and to the castle. He just appears in the, you know, the grounds of the castle. He's already there. And Oku kind of realizes that he's, you know, he's not going to be able to just kill him like a mortal man. So he's kind of comes to the conclusion that, like, I'm probably just going to have to let him, you know, claim his prize. So he allows Medea, he's like, you embrace her once and that's your prize, and then you leave. Big mistake. Obviously Medea is magic, like I said. So the minute that he hugs Etain, he turns both of them into swans. He casts a spell. They're both now swans and they fly away together. So Oku is, of course, raging. He's pissed off with Medea, and he's a bit pissed off with himself that he's kind of been like tricked, and that how could I not see it coming? He's absolutely obsessed with her. Of course he was going to do something silly. So he sends his men all over the island of Ireland, and he demands that they dig up every single fairy fort. And for those of you that don't know, the fairy forts were portals into the other world where the fairy folk live, or the Aishi, or the Tuatha Dé Danann. Years and years and years ago, in the mythological cycle, when the Milesians arrived, the Tuatha Dé Danann and the Milesians came to an agreement that the Milesians would live on the surface of the land, and the Tuatha Dé Danann would live below the surface in the other world. And these fairy forts that pop up all over the surface of the Ireland are portals to get into the other world. So and even to this day and age, people don't mess with fairy forts like this. You just don't. You leave them alone. But he goes and tells all his men, he's like, I don't care how many fairy forts you have to disturb or how many you have to dig up. You dig every single fairy fort you find up until you find the pair of them. So that's what they do. They go and find every single fairy mound and they dig them all up. And eventually they do find Medea's fairy fort, and they tell him, you better bring her back, because he is pissed. So Medea says, fine, I'll bring her back to Tara, but I will say when I bring her back what day and where we do the handover. Like, I'm in charge here. You haven't really got anything to bargain with. I've got the thing that you all want, so I'll be making the rules. So they agree on a time and a day, and the day arrives. Medea rocks up with Etain. Shock. Not just Etain, but he's also got 49 other women with him that look almost identical to Etain. And he's now trying to trick Oku again. He says, I'll give you Etain back, you can have her back on one condition. So if you can pick her out of this lineup of these 50 women, you can have her back. You choose the right woman and you can have her. Now, lads, this is where the story gets a little bit iffy. So Oku chooses a woman that he believes to be Etain. They go off. He thinks, this is my wife. They go off. They're sleeping together. They're, whatever. This woman becomes pregnant and births him a daughter. Not long after, Medea tells him that the woman that he chose and him impregnated is actually Oku's own daughter. So, fuming. So Etain, when Medea took her away, turned her into a swan and took her, she was actually already pregnant, and while she was living in the other world with Medea, she gave birth to this girl, which was the one that Oku picked out of the lineup. So yeah, this is utterly bizarre. So his daughter is both his daughter and his granddaughter. Bizarre. Anyway, and she has just given birth to her own sister. Twisted. Anyway, whatever. So Oku finds this out and is obviously absolutely livid, and not only livid, but he's like full of shame, and he's so ashamed that he actually orders his men to like get rid of the daughter, basically, and he says, take her out of my kingdom. And so basically his men take the baby to the house of a shepherd, and a shepherd's wife, and they throw the baby to the sheepdogs and just like eat, as a snack for the dogs. Basically, he wants to kill the baby. The shepherd and his wife later find the dogs and the baby like snuggled up asleep together, and they end up raising her. And this girl grows up and ends up marrying the next High King of Ireland, the one that comes after Oku. And she ends up being the mother of another High King later down the line called Conair Mór. Anyway, so, and this shame drives Oku absolutely insane. Like, he's bitter, he becomes a twisted king. So throughout his kingship, he takes this like anger and bitterness and shame out on his country, and he like raises taxes to like an absolutely extortionate amount. And the people are like, no, you're taking the piss out of us now, we're not having this anymore. And they end up actually rebelling. And during this rebellion, Oku ends up being killed by Medea's grandson, whose name I think is pronounced as Sigmul Carl. So yeah, Oku dies, and then Medea and Etain end up being together. And that's it, the end. That was the Wooing of Etain. Etain. But yeah, I really enjoy that story. I think it's got everything. It's got drama, it's got incest, it's got romance, got death. What is there not to love? So yeah, that's my episode 11 story for this week. Next week, lads, you are in for a treat. Next week is episode 12, and I've got my first ever guest. So I'm actually talking to the amazing Aoife Corley. She is a print design and textile artist from Kildare, and I came across her work on Instagram, and I was like, I'm having this girl on the podcast. So while I was in Cork, I actually took the train over to Dublin for the day and met up with Aoife and interviewed her. It was amazing. So that'll be out next week, so please do give it a listen. It's a really good follow-on from what we've been talking about, because a lot of her work kind of revolves around Celtic culture and Celtic mythology. Like, it's really, really interesting. I think you're going to love it, so please do listen. But yeah, thank you so much for listening this week. Please like, comment, subscribe, share, all of that jazz. Please go and follow me on Instagram and on TikTok. Listen wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple Music, etc. All of my socials are Plastic Paddies Podcast. I will put it on the screen, and they're all linked down below as well. So please do go and give them a follow. And I keep forgetting to tell you this, but I'm going to say it again. Please, please, please go and listen to my Plastic Paddies podcast playlist. That is a mouthful, on Spotify. It's really, really good. It's got so many good Irish songs on it, old and new. It's got something for everyone. Yeah, like I said, next week, first ever guest. Keep listening, guys. Please do keep tuning in. I really love doing this. It's so much fun. But yeah, that's all for this week. As always, Sinead. Bye.